We're going to talk about red dots, specifically handgun red dots, and whether you should slave the dot to the iron sights, or should they co-witness. This brings me back down memory lane. We're going to loop back to my old police academy days, when my firearms instructor, Detective Kimball, John Kimball, you may have known him, he was famous for a while, but here were his thoughts on the matter. Man, I remember it like it was just yesterday, but I feel like I was just a kid.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions, and I want to have them answered immediately. How many of you put the dot on the sides? Come on, raise your hands. Let's see them. You're doing it wrong. You lack target focus. Well, I've got news for you. You're on my range now. You belong to me. You're not going to waste time trying to line the iron sights? Oh no. It's time now to learn proper presentation. No more co-witness. No more Mr. Kimball, I like the iron sights. Nothing. There is no co-witness! Now, we're going to learn about proper presentation so you can find the dot every time.
All right, bad dad jokes aside, bad impressions aside, hopefully you got a couple chuckles out of that, but we are going to talk about co-witnessing the dot to your iron sights. My name is Dave Tim. Thank you guys very much for spending a few minutes of your day checking out this video with me. Hopefully you find it helpful. If you have any questions about this or any other handgun red dot topic or firearm topic or whatever, go ahead and send us an email to the email address shown below. At the end of the month, we have our QA episode where we give away a prize, plus I answer all of those questions. Make sure to email. You can certainly leave comments down in the section below. I look forward to hearing what you guys think about this topic or anything related as well. What are your thoughts? A little bit about my background. I've been a law enforcement firearms trainer for almost 2 decades. I've been running a red dot in a duty professional capacity. And with that, I've also then developed an instructor course where I travel around the US teaching a red dot handgun instructor course. And that gives me a larger sample size of students to evaluate, get feedback from, equipment, etc. And I'm drawing from all of that experience, plus talking to competitive shooters, other trainers, other respected shooters to gather my knowledge set of data, if you will. So don't just take my word for it. It's okay to be critical of this video and my opinion. Go ahead and verify and validate it for yourself as well. But take the information I'm presenting and just have an open mind, and then when you examine your handgun, see if everything kind of falls in line and makes sense to you. Quick break, I do want to thank a couple of the supporters of the channel that I could not make content without. Number one is Slip 2000. They provide us with all of our cleaning and lubrication supplies, plus it is the stuff I have been using for over a decade. It just works in all conditions, hot, cold, whatever. Their cleaning stuff works great, their lubrication products work, and they give us a code to give you guys. You can save yourself a little bit of money when you're ready to order. Link will be in the description below. Keep your guns running. Use Slip 2000. All of the ammunition was provided by Global Ordnance. I can't thank them enough for their support as well. Ammunition is expensive, and right now is the time to stock up for that upcoming class or training session. And if you head on over to our website, you can click links to provide more information. Thanks to Global Ordnance and Slip 2000. For those of you guys that don't know, we have our red dot, which is our primary aiming system, but we also have a set of backup iron sights. Now the backup iron sights do kind of vary in height depending on what size of an optic you're using. So here I have a rear sight, and then obviously my front sight is up here, but then if we align them, you can see that they are at the very, very bottom of the window. They don't really co-witness at all. If they were co-witnessing, they'd be way up here, which is not what we want. We don't shoot our dot way buried down there to slave everything together. That's just not how it works. Now, where did all this co-witness talk come from? Well, it came from the rifle days. So I assembled this little prop to kind of help us explain what is going on. And as you can see here, I just have a basic red dot on a pick rail with a front sight and a rear sight. So normally for most people when they're shooting their red dot, do I have it installed? No, I don't have it. I thought I had it installed backwards for a sec. But anyways, when most people are shooting, they'll have their sights flipped down and they're shooting, and the red dot is right about here in the center of the optic, which is where we want it to be. Now, if the optic were to fail, they can go ahead and flip up their sights. And guess what? Now the sights are about the same height as where the red dot is, about that center position. This is where co-witness comes from. The sights are at the same height as the red dot. So if we were looking through the same, you would see a picture that looks roughly like this, to where the dot is about the same height as the height. So if we fold the sights away, the dot is in that same height, or if we fold our sights up, it's right about that same height. Now, yes, there are lower third, there are night vision mounts and all that other stuff to basically, get the optic up higher for night vision, but this is kind of where it all came from, this whole co-witness thing. Now, number one, Our handguns don't have flip-up sights. There's only one company that makes flip-up sights, K&S, and they're not very widely used. I think it's kind of a cool idea, but they're not very widely used. So instead what we have is we have your handgun with your red dot. And by the way, all these different guns are on loaded and clear for all the internet range safety officers out there. But basically what we have is we have our primary, and then we have a rear sight and a front sight. Now this particular one has the backup sight in front, but not all of them are like that. You can also get one that has the backup sight behind and then the front sight in, where it's supposed to be. The front sight doesn't change, but there's preference depending on what style of optic and if you want your sight in front of or behind. Most commonly, you're going to have your rear sight behind the optic due to the size, the different plates, the factory dovetail location. But on this one, I had this slide milled aftermarket for the red dot, and with this particular plate from Chambers Customs, this has the rear sight forward of the optic, which there are pros and cons to each. That could probably be its own separate video. So if you have any questions about that, go ahead and leave a comment below and we can address that. But let's talk about this again, because you can see that my dot would be about centered here and the sights are at the very, very bottom of the window, which is where exactly we want them to be. That dot is up here, which is what I'm going to be looking at when I would be shooting. But the iron sights are nice tucked away at the bottom, and I want them at the bottom as out of the way as possible. They are truly just there as a backup in case the optic were to fail, in case a battery were to die, in case I have some obstructions in the top part, broken emitter, whatever it might be, the emitter got blocked on an open emitter, then that's when I would use the sights. The other circumstance might be I'm overpowered by a light source to where that really, really bright light, whether it's car headlights, flashlights, something like that, is overpowering the dot, the photonic barriers, but I can still then transition to my iron sights if the dot were to become not visible. Maybe I had it adjusted wrong, maybe it's in an auto adjustment mode, something like that. So those are certainly circumstances. Also, if people are having trouble finding the dot, yes, you can use the iron sights to find the dot. It'll be there. However, we're really kind of taking a step backwards. The whole point and the advantage of a red dot is that we can target focus. So I'm showing you some footage behind the gun. This is what I would be seeing if I was shooting a red dot handgun, and they come in green too. But I'm gonna be focused on the target, and the reticle is just there. I'm not looking for the sights, I'm not focused on the front sight. I am target focused, and the reticle projects itself onto the target. And that's what is great about having an optic on your handgun, is now I have a single focal plane, which is the target. Whereas with traditional iron sights, I'm supposed to focus on the front sight, have the rear sight a little bit blurry, the target a little bit blurry. But that's a disadvantage based on behavior that we see. If you talk to a lot of people who have been in an armed confrontation, they'll tell you they didn't really see their sights. They were either point shooting or they were target focused and their sights were blurry. So this is the advantage of the red dot, is that we're focused on the target and we ignore those iron sights completely. They're tucked out of the way. Now, when it comes to zeroing, should we slave the dot to the iron sights to start it with zeroing? Throw your iron sights on, verify. That's, you can go through kind of zeroing iron sights, if you will, but basically it's just verifying they're in alignment and then shooting at a distance to test your holds. But shoot the iron sights just to make sure everything's fine. Install your red dot and then zero it independently. Okay, they are not co-witnessed. They are two separate sighting systems. And I do have a video on how to zero your red dot. I updated it not too long ago, so I'll put a link up there in the card or in the description below. But that goes through how I zero a red dot. I ignore my iron sights completely. I could zero that red dot if there were no iron sights on the gun. Okay, so all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shoot. I prefer a 10-yard zero. We are gonna do an upcoming video on 10 versus 15 versus 25, whatever. There's all sorts of internet debates over there, but 10-yard zero serves me just fine, and I'll share some of the data on why I made my decision versus just taking the internet's word for it. But I'm gonna zero that independent. Now, here's what I want it to look like. I'm showing you a couple of graphics now on the screen. And some of the instructors out there who show these graphics, in my opinion, don't show them correctly, because when we are looking through the gun and we're looking at the center of the window, we're putting that dot, think of like a donut, if you will, okay? And if we were looking at a beautiful donut with a nice hole in it, that's where I want the dot to be. I want that dot to be in the center of the donut. Now, I realize some of these optics out there are square, okay? But just pretend for a second that they were all round. I ideally want the dot in the center of this optic, and those sights are way at the bottom, not obstructing at all, just there, just in case I need them, in case the optic were to fail, I had to have an electronic issue, whatever, like I said before. Now, a lot of people will show those sights way tucked at the bottom, but the reality is what it looks like in real life. When I'm looking through the optic, my front sight is a little raised. because my red dot will go out at a line like this. So pretend like the gun is here. Magic of Hollywood, if you could please hold this right about like that for just a quick sec. Boom. All right, so that's being held there. Now I have my line of sight, that red dot. Those iron sights, my rear sight and front sight, are actually going to be tipped, and those will intersect wherever my 0 point is. For me, it's about 10 yards, for example. So that's why when I'm looking through the gun for real, and I actually am looking where the dot is in the center of the optic, the front sight is actually going to be raised slightly, as you're seeing in this graphic. That's what it really does look like. And then if I were to need it, or if I then looked through using the iron sights, then the dot does tilt down at the bottom, and that's not optimal. We're wasting all this space in the optic by slaving our dot to our iron sights, and that's just not optimal. We're not getting as much visibility. We're not getting as much of the sweet spot of the glass, if you will. It's easier to lose the dot if you tilt it down, things like that. So we want to shoot with that dot in the center of the optic. Now, here's another talking point. Why does all this matter? Why is it so difficult to find the dot? In my classes, I talk about what I like to call the funnel of visibility. And that basically means that as the optic is further and further away from my eye, the funnel narrows and the angle of visibility of the dot is less. So for example, if that red dot was really close to my eye, I can tilt the gun several degrees and I can still see the dot. However, as I present out, now that funnel has narrowed and the amount of visible degrees I have is less. So therefore it becomes more critical. Now in any good quality red dot class, whether it be mine or anybody else's, we talk about finding the dot because that's the #1 student struggle out there, is finding the dot on presentation. So we talk about proper presentation, proper grip, all of that as a platform to lead you to then when you present, the dot is just there and you don't even have to think about it. That's a whole other video in and of itself. But that's the core of any good red dot class, is to get that foundation so that you can find the dot and then you can move forward and not have to really worry about your iron sights at all, only in case there was a stoppage. So at the end of the day, I hope this helped really solidify the point that you should not co-witness or you should not slave the dot on the iron sights. I hope this information was helpful. Again, if you have any questions about this, anything handgun red dot related, anything firearms related, please leave a comment in the comment section below or send us a question to the email address shown below. If you guys like the content, I really would appreciate it if you hit that share button, hit the thumbs up, hit notifications, all that good stuff. We want to keep the channel growing. I want to get good information out to as many people as possible. Also, if you're feeling generous and want to support the channel, you can contribute to our Patreon page. We have different levels of support, account holders, all that stuff. You can check that out on Patreon. Thank you guys very much for watching and have a great day.